Hello and welcome to Discipleship 101, a journey of growth in the New Testament. I'm your host, Pastor Eli Rojas Jr., and joining me is our wonderful group from Harbor of Hope Seventh-day Adventist Church. And before we begin, let us start with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time. I pray that you will bless our conversation and bless our time, that we may grow in our relationship with you. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. And we've been going through quite a few lessons of the discipleship growth journey. And we've gone all the way up, almost all the way through the Gospels. We've gone through most of the lessons. And last week we talked about the washing of Jesus' feet, of Mary washing Jesus' feet. And in one version, it talks about an unnamed woman, and John names her. John says this was Mary, and this was in a very interesting setting right before Jesus was going to be crucified. Well, here we come to the next part of the story, which is Jesus now washing the disciples' feet. So Jesus washing the disciples' feet is the opposite in a sense of what happened last week, but we see that it's with the very same reason and very same intentions. Hey, I hear somebody in there too. Sounds like Miss Juanita has some good company with her. So washing the disciples' feet. So let's go ahead and read John 13. We're going to read 5 through 10, because I think the whole picture is in these 5 verses. We don't want to separate them from each other. So verse 5 says, after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. Then he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? And Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. And Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. And Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him. Therefore he said, you are not all clean. So this is something that has kind of been lost over the ages when it comes to us as Christians. We kind of lost the background to this, but in a society that was very hierarchy focused, it's called an honor society, where depending how much honor you received, it defines your position in society. So it doesn't necessarily go to the riches, even though that's usually who was honored the greatest. But it was the older people were given higher honor. The more political people were given higher honor. Depending on your position in your work, if you were a leader, then you were given higher honor than if you were a worker. And there was this big hierarchy thing where basically the job that was the most important job was given to the person with highest honor. The job that was the least important was given to the person with the lowest honor. So you could see in society where, it's almost like if somebody got passed up for a position, or if somebody got, um, you know, they weren't giving all the respect that was due to them. There was huge issues in society where, you dishonored somebody, and that was basically, we can kind of trace it all the way to maybe England, where you would see people fighting to the death and dueling each other because someone lacked respect for them. And and that happened in that time. There was a lot of issues of honor and lack of honor. We see this in the time of Jesus in other verses where it talks about not giving Jesus a basin to wash his hands in, and not letting him do, not giving him certain respects, not giving him the best place at the table. These were all honors that were supposed to be given to people, that the Sadducees and the Pharisees, even when they invited him to their house, would lack a lot of honor to Jesus. And it was kind of a way for them to say, hey, you're here, but we don't respect you. And it comes up a lot when Jesus is going over to people's houses and talking with them. You see this, in general, lack of honor that's given to Jesus, like a lack of respect, because of all the things that Jesus would say that bugged the Pharisees a lot. And so they basically felt justified to dishonor him by not letting him wash his hands, not washing his feet, all these things that you were supposed to do for your guests, they wouldn't do for him. So this society is very much honor focused. And, that's actually, if you ever get a chance to hear Dr. Joseph Kidder speak about the parable of the prodigal son from a perspective of someone who is Middle Eastern. Dr. Kidder is it was originally from the area that used to be Nineveh, so it's in Iraq, and he explains how big of a deal the prodigal son would have been, how radical of an idea that would have been in that society, for a father to dishonor himself by being the one who chases after the son, being the person who accepts and forgives what the son did to him without requiring any penance or any kind of humiliation. Because what the son did to the father in that story was societal humiliation. And we see this in the Bible too, where when a child would disrespect their parent to that extent, to that level, biblically, the parents were allowed to kill them. So, we talk about like, oh, well, if the daughter talks back to her father or her mother, or if but no, back in that day, when a son or a daughter brought shame to the family, biblically speaking, they were permitted to kill them. That's the level of importance that respect had in that time. So when you see that, how important honor is, and then you get to this point, and I know that Jesus, this was all intentional. We could say, well, was it intentional for the person to not come? But God ordained it. God kind of worked it so that the person who is basically supposed to come and wait on them never showed up. And it probably was the disciples' fault. They rented the room. They didn't get servants. They didn't get people to attend. And this was a big deal, because for that group of men, there was no lower position that you could have than to wash somebody else's feet, to the point that there's really nothing that in our society we can compare it to. If I'm going to ask this question just to break up the monologue a little bit. In our society, what is at all seen as like the worst job and the least respectful job that you could have? What would you say would be considered the least respectful job that someone can have in our society?
Maybe a janitor.
Yes, janitor is tough. We tend to have a little bit of respect for our janitors, but typically no one who can get a better job is working as as a janitor. No one who can kind of go up. You don't see a lot of people with, good degrees and saying, oh, you know what, I don't want to be a CEO, I want to be a janitor, So that's a good example. Is there anything else? Because I feel like we've come to the point where we respect janitors a little bit. Is there something else that, is a good example of a job that is least respected in our society? Trash man. Believe it or not, trash guys in our society, because of unions and certain other reasons, you could probably get a really good paying job as a garbage guy, garbageman, or a garbage person, I guess. I think they make more than in some places they make six figures. So it's a pretty interesting thing, but that's definitely not a job most people are shooting for, like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a janitor, I want to be a trash collector. What will be another job? Can you think of three? I like three, it rounds it off. Well, so is there another position maybe that is like the least respected job that you basically only work at if you have no other options?
I was thinking mining, like they used to do in caves and stuff. You have to go in there and work in the cave in the mines. I remember
Definitely.
seeing movies about that, how the explosions and they don't have fresh air and they're all the way down there in the mine.
You see a lot of, in that time, you see a lot of young people working in the mines because it was like child labor. They wanted to get the younger people to work there, that they didn't have to pay much, and it was very dangerous. It was very, very, very much, if you could do anything else, you would have been at that
And
time.
that brings me to the sweat factory. What is it? Sweat factories?
Yeah. Sweatshops.
Sweatshops, yeah.
Well, and I was thinking too, something that we kind of overlook is almost any position, almost any job where there's an internship, the intern ends up becoming the low person on the totem pole. Basically, whatever job you don't want to do, you give it to the intern. So, if there's anything that's like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with this, I don't want to do this, the intern ends up getting that. And so we can kind of wrap our mind around it, but still we can't wrap our mind around it as well as we could, because we just don't live in an honor-focused society. In our society, basically, people give everyone the same amount of respect for the most part. Some people get advantages and disadvantages, prejudice that we're not supposed to have, but we do. But for the most part, I'm going to respect people no matter what their job is. And I feel like, at least a lot of us do. Not everyone does, but most people do. But this is a job that if you did this, you're basically admitting that you are the least important person in the room. And we talked about the disciples fighting constantly about who is most important. So it just blows their mind when this happens and they're fighting to figure out who's going to be the most important. And the most important, that, by the way, there's no question that Jesus was the most important person. He was the teacher, he was the rabbi, and the rabbi was so important to them that there was a saying, and this is something that I've mentioned in the past. There was a saying that would go, may the dust of your rabbi be upon you, meaning that you wanted to be so close and wanted to respect your rabbi so much that the dust from his sandals, from him walking down the path, would come up and cover you. And so they respected him so much that they wanted to be as close to him as possible. And if it was even a blessing where I want you to be so close to him that you get dirt all over you, that you get dusty and get the dirt all over you. And so it was no question that Jesus was the most important person in that room. And they're fighting. They're like, well, John, you're the youngest, and James, but James, you messed up. The other day you said this, and you shouldn't have said that. So you should be the one to do this. And you can imagine that all of their pride, all of their, all of their arguments, like they've got a checklist of, well, I can't do it because I'm the oldest, and somebody else says, well, I can't do it because I was in the group the longest, and somebody says, but I can't do it because I'm the one that brought you. I'm the one that brought you to Jesus. And they're fighting back and forth, and then Jesus, without saying anything, just puts on the towel and starts to wash the disciples' feet. What kind of reaction do you think that would have given them? I mean, you can kind of see this, but Peter is the perfect response to how the disciples were feeling. But you can imagine, I mean, I don't know what kind of perspective we can put this in, because it just doesn't exist in our society anymore. There's just nothing that can be on par, can be on this level. It'd almost be like having, let's pick your favorite president, from the United States. I won't say this one or the last one or the one before that, but wherever you think is the most important, they come to your house and they notice that your sink is clogged, and they start fixing your sink and taking out the gunk from your sink. It's like, whoa. Don't do this. I can get somebody else to do this. In fact, I will go to the next town over and get somebody to do this. There is no way I'm going to let you get on my floor and start fixing the pipes and start messing around with it when you are as important as you are. And Peter obviously just completely freaks out. There's no way. Jesus says, Peter says, you shall never, ever wash my feet. In that moment, that was the most respectful he could be. He was thinking in terms of honor and in terms of preserving Jesus's honor in that society. He was saying, I am never going to let you consider yourself lower than me. There's no way I'm ever going to let you serve me. There's no way I'm ever going to let you humble yourself below my status and make me more important to you. With all the love in his heart, he freaked out. He's like, there is no way this is going to happen. And then Jesus kind of hits hard back. He says, not only if that's true, then you're never going to be part of my disciples. So what do you think Peter is going through Peter's mind as Jesus tells him, literally, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me? What can you see the gears kind of switching out and changing and rolling? What do you think is going through Peter's mind as Jesus says, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me?
Well, I guess he was saying that he wants to be part of Jesus. And when he said, don't wash my feet, you're not going to wash my feet, he's thinking he was honoring him. But when Christ says, well, if I don't wash your feet, you're not going to be my disciple, he immediately did a 360 turn, because it's like saying, if you want to be with God and somebody says, well, you can't do this, or whatever, and the option's gone, then you're going to flip the script, so to speak, and do what you thought you would never do because you so much want to be, serve Christ.
And so it's very interesting that Peter, being the exaggerated guy he is, he says, well, if I have to let you wash my feet in order for me to be a part of you, then wash my hands and wash my head. Give me a bath. I don't want to just give you a little bit. Like, if that's what you need for me to be a part of you, then he's just telling him basically, I'm all in, do whatever you got to do. But then Jesus says something interesting here too. He says that he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet. So what is that telling us about that experience? Like, why was Jesus making it a point? Because we believe in things like baptism. We believe in on those things where, we give ourselves completely to God. So what is this statement kind of telling us about our Christian walk in that same sense? Like, if we're realizing that, we still wash each other's feet. What is this telling us about our spiritual journey?
Well, the feet back in that day would be the dirtiest part, because you're walking around in the streets that are unsanitary, and by washing your feet, you are reaching the low point, or the dirtiest part. And I guess that's humility.
Yeah, definitely. That's the number one. There's so many wonderful lessons here that I was almost thinking, man, we could almost do a whole study just on this one passage, just because of all the things that are here. But our attitude is so important when it comes to Christianity. And without realizing it, we can start to become like the Pharisees, in the sense that we think that what we're doing makes us better than other people. And that is so contradictory to what Jesus was teaching us. And to this day, I hear of stories about, people coming off the streets and being told, no, you can't come into church because you're not wearing a suit. And they're like, no, but I mean, I really want to hear, I really feel called to come to Jesus. And well, if you really feel called to come to Jesus, then you'll buy a suit and come next week with a suit on. And how we start to kind of distinguish ourselves, where we think, oh, I'm doing the right thing, I'm the right way. And then when somebody comes in who is not on the same level we are, we can kind of put a lot of qualifications in there. We can say, oh, well, people who don't worship the way we worship, people who don't eat the way we eat, who don't do music the way we do music. All these things, we start to look at people and say, well, if you were really a disciple of Jesus, you would be up here, you would be higher up. And we can kind of look down our noses at people, and it can be this wonderful reality check where it's like, hey, we need to make sure that our most defining characteristic is not our piety, but our humility. Humility is one of the greatest virtues that we can have as Christians, because without humility, it kind of makes all those other things we're doing kind of stink. You think about all the people that who think they're better than other people, and you hear when they talk about different things, you're like, oh, you think you think you're wise and you think you're smart, but every time you hear that person talk, you're like, oh, that person is just so backward, so rude, and so so oblivious to the reality of, they think that they're gold clad. In reality, they're just singing in a pig pen. And we can forget that how important humility is to Christianity. It needs to be one of the most important aspects of our Christian walk, is to be like Jesus, in the sense that we're not looking for ways to make ourselves better than other people, to distinguish us from other people. There's a lot of people that's their whole focus in life. It's like, I need to get this job. Why? Well, because if I get this job, then I'm going to feel important. And if I feel important, then I'm going to feel better than other people. I'm going to feel good about myself. We measure ourselves by the success of others. So I can say, well, it's okay, I haven't run a marathon, but neither has my neighbor. Who cares if my neighbor did something or not? Like, that doesn't matter. Like, my success needs to be measured on what I can do for God, and not what other people are doing. But we can get into that trap where we start to think of our Christianity, well, it's okay, because even though I'm not doing everything I should, I'm still better than my cousin who, is all turned around and upside down and doing all kinds of bad things. At least I'm doing better than they are, without realizing that the question is not how much better than other people are we, is how much like Christ am I? And if I'm being proud and kind of looking down my nose at people, then I'm actually failing the one test that I was meant to do as a Christian, was to be like Jesus. So humility is so, how do we find ways to be humble in a society where you really don't have to wash people's feet, you really don't have to do humiliating things? How do we maintain our humility the way that Christ did in our time and age?
Can I just say something?
Mhm. Yes, please.
So society is like that because generationally, your parents say, well, I can't believe you're doing this. Look at so-and-so, or look at your brother. So it's like, as a child, you kind of compared to family members who are doing better than you, or this person, somebody's child, daughter, whatever. And then you grow up with that in your family, and you think it's normal because that's what you've grown up with.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. That's probably why a lot of us is like that.
And it's tough because it really is ingrained. And that's, we're all gifted with a desire to accomplish, to have measures of success. School is like that. You're always getting graded, and you're always like, okay, am I doing good or bad? If I get good grades, I'm happy. If I get bad grades, I'm sad. And we have that, like you're saying, Miss Cindy, that ingrained in from a child, from an early age, to compare ourselves to other people. And when we want to feel good about ourselves, the best thing I can do is go to somewhere that they're doing worse than I am, and be like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, look at me, I'm way better than so and so. And and it comes from the way we're compared to when we're kids, and it comes from school, and it comes from a lot of different things that we just we kind of miss sometimes. But it comes to the point where, without realizing it, I'm still kind of comparing myself to other people and judging them. How do I maintain humility in a society where, I don't have to wash people's feet? Like, when I go to church in a nice suit. I go to church and we all praise and do things, and it's really hard to learn humility in circumstances where there's really no way for me to to be humble in a sense. Like, how do you learn humility in our context, in the way we live today?
I think humility is kind of attitude, because it's not based on what you have or what others have. It's an attitude, because you might not have anything, but at the same time be proud and full of yourself. And and so it is an attitude of treating others with kindness. It's an attitude of loving people and being extending and being kind to others, and helping them, and not thinking that anything is below you, but just treating people with respect and with love. And I think that's the best way to be, have a humble spirit.
I think you're saying something that's very important. And one of the things that I see is learning how to put others before ourselves. And that's something that we don't need to, we don't need to practice in the same way. How in our society, how do we learn? How can we put others before ourselves? Because that's basically the root of humility, is saying, okay, even though this is maybe uncomfortable for me, I have to wash somebody's feet. I have to go out of my way to do something maybe degrading, maybe a little bit beneath what I'm used to. But I'm doing this because they have a need that outweighs my desire to maintain my own comfort level, So what do we do in a week to put the needs of others before our own? What can we do during the week? Because I don't mind putting the needs of others before my own, except most of the time, there's really nothing I'm aware of where it's a choice, where it's like, well, we live in a society where I have enough food. Everyone seems to have enough food, and there's really no reason for me to buy any less food or sacrifice anything in that nature. What can we do to put the needs of others before our own? How can we do that in a society where I think, I know there's people with a lot of need, but most people at the very bottom have food stamps and have housing allowances and things like that. What do I do to put the needs of others before my own?
How does it make that sound?
I'm not sure. I don't hear.
Anyway, so I think really, like if you're in the grocery store and there's somebody in line and you've got like, one or two items, or you've got a whole basket full, and somebody comes up with, one item, then I could say, well, I've been standing here waiting for just as long, they're going to have to wait. Or I could say, you can go ahead of me, because I'm respecting them, I guess, just being kind that way. Or I remember at work when I worked on the floor as a nurse, and we had the folks that cleaned environmental services, I think they'd come and clean and mop and do the bathrooms, and they would stock up our supplies. And when they came on the unit, like most of the nurses didn't speak to them, but I'd say, hey, how are you? And how's your day going? And all this. And when I went downstairs, I would go, when I was leaving, go around the back and say hi to them and speak to them. And they were like, you're so nice. You're just the only one that talks to us. And I think, well, how awful is that? Because, the nurses or the doctors, I feel that they're better than other staff that's working there, but they're not in that same profession. So that's one thing I used to do when I worked in the hospital, just respecting everybody, no matter what they worked as,
Definitely.
That's all I can think of.
I think we need to realize that it's really kind of simple. If you get back to the golden rule, you know, you treat others the way you want to be treated, and that puts everybody sometimes in a humble position, sometimes in a not so humble position. But
I think
It's the-
that's a very good point. Yeah.
I was thinking about everybody's position or role is important. If it were not for the housekeepers, think about our infection rate, think about how filthy the hospital would be. Everybody's position, the dietary, everybody, that people who pick up trash. I was in one country, I think I was in Martinique, and the garbage folk were on strike, and we were visitors to that place. And I said I would never come back. And so it left a stink in my nostrils as to how, how important it was, and when they weren't there, how it affected the whole country, and how the visitors and tourists were impacted by it. But everybody's job is important.
Amen. But I think,
Yeah.
yes, go ahead, Ms. Loya.
Yeah, I agree that everyone, we should treat others with respect and with kindness, because they are very valuable. And so it's not something that we have to do. It's something that should come naturally to us. Like when we have the Holy Spirit and we are disciples and we follow Christ, that should come automatically. We should reach out to everyone and in love and with compassion. And it reminds me of a story I read about Ben Carson. And he says when he was hired to work at John Hopkins, they were interviewing different people. And he says that one of the things that he got the job for, one of the reasons he got the job was that he would come in and he would say hello to all the receptionists, to all the people that worked in the hospital, to the janitors, to everyone. And the other doctors just walked in with all this attitude and everything. And then he got the job because of his kindness and because he was out there and was polite and treated everyone with respect. And I think it just shows that it's not something that should be forced or anything. It's just should be our nature to be like Christ and to treat others like Christ would treat them.
Mhm. And I think there is, though, a level of intentionality that we have to take on, because one of the things that I heard mentioned, which was very important, is treating others the way you would want to be treated. And we can take that in a very passive nature, and kind of keep, keep it in the realm of what we don't do to others, in the sense of like, well, I'm going to treat people the way I would like to be treated. So I'm not going to yell, and I'm not going to be disrespectful, and I'm not going to be rude. But we can also take it further and say, well, how, if I were Miss Cindy, for instance, like how would I want to be treated? And we could even go the extra mile and say, I think it would be nice if I were in her position. I would like to receive, an extra, a nice phone call every once in a while, or I would like to be treated to lunch every once in a while, or I would like for somebody to, go that extra mile for me. And I think that if we think about it that way, then we realize that this washing of the feet is something that needs to be translated into our day-to-day. It's like saying, okay, how can I serve the people around me, not just not be mean. I think that definitely we have a problem in our society where there's a lot of mean people. I don't know why they're so mean, and they think that they can just go around being mean to everybody and that people owe them their service. Like, man, I don't know why it's so rare for people to say thank you and to say hi and to be polite. And that's definitely valuable in every sense of the word. But, we can serve other people and kind of go beyond our comfort zone, kind of go beyond and kind of look at people and say, what would I like to have done for me in different situations? And that's where, if I had skills as a handy person, it would be good to have somebody who's like, hey, do you need anything? Is there anything I can help you fix, or is there anything I can help you do? And kind of serve people in the same way that washing their feet would serve people. Is that was a big, important need that people had in that time. And our situation is a lot of times, because of how individualistic society has become, it kind of becomes uncomfortable to figure out, what could I do for other people? And that can be hard. It can be a hard question to answer, because honestly, I wouldn't know what I could do for other people in normal situations. Like, I'm not really sure what I can do for other people, and to find out what I could do for other people may be a little uncomfortable, because they either is going to be doing something that's not many people doing, so it's going to be a little awkward, or it's going to be something that people take advantage of. And I've had that happen to me too, where it's like, oh, I want to be nice, I want to go beyond, I want to go the extra mile. And I had people who were like, oh, okay, well, can you take me to the airport at 3 o'clock in the morning? Like, do I say yes or no? Because I totally did say that I was going to do that. And so, yeah, so it's definitely something that is difficult in our day and age. But I know that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so the golden rule, do unto others as you want them to do unto you, it doesn't always stand, because in the area that I work, I see where we come up with these great plans. We're going to get some funds, we've got a grant, we're going to go into the childcare centers, we're going to do this for the teachers, blah, blah, blah. And they're not interested, because what they want is something totally different. Their needs might be that they just need extra staff, or they need funding to buy the food or something like that. But I'm thinking, well, if I had a childcare, what I would need is this, that, and the other. So, and because of the wide cultural society that we have living, multicultural people that live here, what we think we want here in North America may be something totally different for somebody who's from, let's say, Asia or from Africa. So I'm just saying that to say it's important to not just assume what you want is what the person across the road wants, but to get to know them and to find out, what their needs are, and actually meet that need.
And I would say, and that's a good point, that I would say that's part of the golden rule, in the sense that if I were in that position, I would want somebody to ask me before they do something random. I've had people like, oh, I want to wash your car. Like, yeah, okay, but I don't, so it's not just what do I want, but what does that person want? And if I were in that position, I would also want to be consulted before somebody came over and started trimming my hedges. Like, oh, well, I appreciate that you're trimming my hedges, but that's not really what I wanted to be done. I wanted to do that myself. And I really, if you wanted to help, I really could use help in cleaning this or doing that. And so that's definitely important. I think that a lot of Christians make that mistake where they're like, oh, I'm just going to do these things that I think that people are going to like. And then they get frustrated, like, why aren't people responding with heartfelt appreciation and throwing roses and saying how grateful they are? It's like, well, because you were doing what you wanted to do and not what they wanted you to do. and that makes a big difference.
I don't think the golden rule means what you're doing for people and what you expect them to do for you. I think it means you treat them with the same type of respect that you would like to have. And it has nothing to do with whether you're a teacher and you need this and I want to give you something else. It's just that I will listen to what the teacher wants and treat her respectfully, not just blow her off or whatever. I has anything at all to do with us providing for somebody else what we think that they need, other than just absolute respect, which
We-
is that,
And love and all
yeah,
these things.
love
Yeah.
and courtesy and kindness and just like with Jesus, when they didn't want to wash his feet, it wasn't that they didn't want to wash his feet. It was that they thought that they were they were enabling him to let them be disrespectful.
Mhm,
That's not what they wanted.
mhm. Well,
Um,
and I would say, yeah, that's our problem in a lot of senses is unfortunately we like to take some shortcuts, and so there's a lot of things that are little effort and we can do and there's the things that we can say, okay, well, I can drop something off, or I can put something here, I can put something there, and it's one of those, we like those things where we can kind of do something quickly and kind of pat ourselves on the back and keep going.
that's what I'm
And
saying.
we need to go that extra mile. It's like, if I really care to help this person, then I have to take that extra step of what can I help? Like, let me respectfully understand what you want. But unfortunately, that's a little extra step, and that's sometimes more than we want to commit to helping somebody. And that's part of a negative culture of helping people, to the point where there's a lot of people who are saying, I don't want your help anymore, because you're not asking me, you're not saying, how can I help? You're telling me this is what I want you to do, and I'm going to tell you I don't want that to be done. And a lot of
And you're-
people have been,
Wait,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, and then when that point where you're telling the person what they need and so on and so forth, you're not respecting them the way you'd want to be respected, because very few of us want to be told what we have to do or whatever. We just
Yeah.
want somebody to respect our right to be, if nothing
Exactly.
else.
And that's why, unfortunately, the reality is that Christians have been kicked out of some places, because what they were doing was saying, this is what I want to do. And people were like, well, if you're going to act that way, then we don't want you here anymore.
Yeah.
And we have to learn, and it can take a little bit more time, it can take a little more effort, but it's a lot more impactful when we start to look at the world and try to not just do something, but to serve other people, to do something that is wanted from them, that is something that can help them, that can make a difference in their life. And I know that God will bless those efforts a lot. We're coming to the end of our time. I wanted to mention too, this it's funny, we talk about the parallel of baptism and washing the feet versus what we're talking about, the spiritual parallel. And there's two things I wanted to mention with that. The first thing is, we can see here, we can kind of put this really focused on Peter. It's interesting that Jesus is basically saying, hey, you're 90% there. What you really need is just for me to wash your feet. Like, we kind of think about Peter kind of stumbling, bumbling, and then all of a sudden, magically, he experiences the day of Pentecost, and then he's magical, and he does everything perfectly, and such like that. So Well, there is progress that has been made throughout the 3 years that Jesus is there. And he's basically telling Peter, you're really only missing a little bit of him. You're basically missing a little piece. You're almost there. You're almost there. So Peter is saying, wash my head, wash my hands, wash my feet. And Jesus is saying, well, you are very close. And I know that this is also talking about, he was kind of throwing some shade at Judas Iscariot, Judas, who was gonna
Betray him.
would betray him. But this was also in that sense saying, Peter, you're almost there. You just need a little bit more to go. But I like the parallel of the almost clean of the baptism and washing the feet, because we get baptized and then we mess up, and then we're like, oh, I feel bad, I feel terrible, I feel like I've gotten far away from God, and it's almost like Jesus is saying, hey, baptism, you get clean. We get clean during baptism. But then when you're walking and when you're going through life, you get a little dirt on your feet. You get messed up. You kind of trip and fall. You get muddy. You get dirt caked on your feet. And a lot of times it's more than dirt. A lot of times it's something that stinks. It's bad and it's terrible. And you're like, I can't believe I let this happen. I can't believe this happened and such. And so, like, oh man, I feel so bad. I feel like I've betrayed my decision to get baptized. And Jesus is kind of telling us in this kind of, I like to call them object lessons, because these are things that we do today that are teaching us lessons, that are trying to help us to learn more about our walk with him. And so it's like, you got clean, you got good, you're on the right track, but you've just been on the road a little too long. And every once in a while, it's good to just sit down and take the dirt off and remember, to reconnect with Jesus, to reconnect with the sacrifice that Jesus made for us in that communion process, where we drink the grape juice and eat the bread and wash each other's feet, to kind of recheck ourselves and kind of refocus and say, okay, let me get the dirt off and remember what my purpose is: to serve others, to love God with all my heart and mind. And it helps to keep us going down the line. But it's so powerful to me to see that lesson of we're going to need to wash our feet as we go along, because the road is dirty and things get on our feet. But as long as we've been cleaned through the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and now what we need to keep doing is just making sure that we keep taking moments to wash our feet, to clean the dirt off our feet, and then we can keep going again, and not feeling bad about our mistakes, and not letting Satan kind of push us into discouragement, but actually just saying, okay, I just got to reconnect with Jesus, just got to wash my feet, and then I can keep walking on the road. And I love that God is patient with us, and he kind of Jesus gives us that and says, you're clean, but you just need a little bit of a washing of your feet every once in a while. We just need to reconnect with him and keep walking. And before long, we will be where God is leading us to. Any thoughts or questions that you'd like to share before we finish today's lesson? Well, I do feel like Peter a lot of times, and I do kind of like, Lord, not just my feet, but man, I need to reconnect with you completely. But I know that that Jesus is working on our hearts and minds, and this is an important lesson. I think the best thing that we can take away from the foot washing is how important it is for us to serve one another, to go out of our way and go out of our comfort zone and do things for other people, to show them, our love and to serve them. We need to learn what it means to really serve one another. And I know that's a growing process. So I pray that I will serve better in the days to come, and that every day I can keep growing and keep developing in my service for God and for others. And I hope that we all can continue to grow in our service to God and to our service to one another. Any thought? All right, let's close with prayer. Dear Lord, I know that I'm not proud in the sense of, oh, I'm so much better than other people, but so often I might not look down on people, but I also struggle to serve them the way that you call us to serve them, not just to throw them things that I think they will want or things that I think they need, but to actually serve them, to say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? What can I do to make your life better and do things for others, Lord, that every day I may wash the feet of my brothers and sisters wherever they are, and help us to be more like you in how we treat others and the words that we say and how we respect from the outcasts of our society to the most important people, to just treat them all with respect, with love, and to speak truth to them, but to always speak truth in love. Bless us and help us to continue to grow in our discipleship journey, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.